Usually when you look at a football match at the sharp end of a Premier League season, you expect this kind of, well, mechanical precision.
Right, yeah. You expect the data to just play out perfectly on the pitch.
Exactly. You look at the league table, you look at the budgets, the home advantage, all those underlying metrics, and the conventional wisdom just spits out a predictable result.
Like a physics equation, almost.
Right. Top of the league, playing at home against a mid-table side, should just be a foregone conclusion, a total formality before lifting the trophy.
I mean, that's the comfort of visible data, right? We desperately want sports to behave like math. Higher wages plus home field equals 3 points.
But the reality of a title run-in just shatters that illusion completely.
Oh, absolutely, because once you introduce the psychological pressure of a championship race.
The human element, yeah.
Yeah, the sheer unfiltered emotion of 90-plus minutes plus the fatigue of a 10-month campaign. Well, that spreadsheet becomes totally useless. You're not looking at data anymore.
They're looking at diagnostic muddy waters.
Muddy waters, exactly.
And we are diving straight into those muddy waters today because, well, our mission is to unpack a genuine seismic shock in the Premier League.
A massive shock.
We are zeroing in on Saturday, April 11th, 2026, the Emirates Stadium. League leaders Arsenal step out, desperate to extend their lead to a commanding 12 points.
Which would have been massive for them.
Huge. But instead of a routine coronation against AFC Bournemouth, they suffered a devastating 1-2 defeat at home.
A result that essentially throws a live grenade right into the middle of the title race.
And to really understand the mechanics of this collapse, we've pulled from a pretty wild stack of sources for you today.
We really have. We're looking at the official BBC match report, which has all that granular underlying data and momentum charts.
Right, and we're cross-referencing that with AFC Bournemouth's very triumphant official club report.
Naturally. But crucially, we are also examining the raw, totally unfiltered fan reactions from across the Reddit spectrum.
Yeah, specifically we're looking at the subreddits, our Gunners, RMCFC, Red Devils, Soccer, and our Premier League.
Because the stakes here, I mean, they just cannot be overstated for anyone listening to this.
No, Arsenal came in hoping to put Manchester City under this mathematically suffocating pressure.
And instead, they've blown the doors wide open.
Completely wide open. But we aren't just going to recap the goals today. We're going to explore the tactical mechanisms, the psychological frailty, and why this specific loss has triggered a full-blown existential crisis for Arsenal fans.
While also looking at how this was a historic record-breaking afternoon for Bournemouth.
Right. So to understand the magnitude of the fallout, let's look at the physical reality of the two teams as they walked out of the tunnel.
The BBC report highlights a massive physiological disparity right from the opening whistle.
Because Bournemouth came in fresh off a 3-week break. Right?
Exactly. They hadn't played a competitive fixture in nearly a month.
Wow.
While Arsenal, on the other hand, were still carrying the heavy legs and the emotional lactic acid from a really grueling Champions League quarterfinal against Sporting CP just days before.
And you could see that physical freshness almost instantly. I mean, let's trace the chronology here. We hit the 17th minute, and Bournemouth strikes first.
And it wasn't a scrappy goal either.
Not at all. I want to emphasize this for you listening. This was a surgical dissection. The Bournemouth Club report describes a, and I quote, quite majestic pass from Ryan Christie.
Yeah, he spots Adrian Truffert making this bursting run down the left flank.
Truffert whips in a cross. It takes a harsh deflection off Arsenal center back William Saliba, and it falls perfectly to Bournemouth's teenage sensation, Junior Krupi.
Who just converts it at the far post, 1-0.
The mechanism of that goal is vital, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Bournemouth utilized this sudden vertical switch of play. When a team is fatigued, like Arsenal clearly was, they're horizontal shifting.
You mean the collective movement of the defensive block from side to side?
Right, exactly. That shifting slows down by crucial fractions of a second. Christie's pass exploited that exact lag.
So the deflection off Saliba was unlucky, but the space Truffert had was a direct result of tired legs.
Exactly. Arsenal's midfield just failed to slide over in time to block the passing lane.
Okay, so Arsenal does manage to rally, but the equalizer in the 35th minute is bathed in controversy.
Oh, massive controversy.
Gabriel blasts a shot from incredibly close range, and it strikes Ryan Christie. Referee Michael Oliver instantly points to the spot for a handball.
And rival fans were absolutely furious about this.
Yeah, especially on 10 Bevels in Soccer. There was this user named Im Robin's right foot, who argued the mechanics of the decision. They said, how can proximity not be considered for that pen? He's a yard away, and the ball is fired up into him.
Which is the eternal debate of the modern handball rule, you know?
Right, because human reaction time literally cannot move an arm out of the way from a yard away at that speed.
Exactly. The referee's interpretation relied on the arm making the body unnaturally bigger, but it just highlights this growing frustration among fans.
They feel the mechanics of the human body are being ignored by the rule book.
But regardless of the debate, Victor Gyokeres steps up.
And he hits an absolute thunderbolt, a right-footed penalty into the top left corner.
Bournemouth keeper Ori Petrovic guesses the correct way, but he just can't get to it. The sheer kinetic energy beats him.
So we go into halftime at 1-1.
Yeah.
And at that moment, logic says Arsenal has weathered the storm, right? They're at home. They have 45 minutes to grind down a mid-table side.
You'd think so. But instead, the match just stagnates completely until the 74th minute.
When Bournemouth delivers the fatal blow.
Mm-hmm.
And the build-up is spectacular again.
Yeah, Junior Krupi finds David Brooks. Brooks initiates this rapid exchange with Evanilson.
And Evanilson executes this delicate flick into the path of Alex Scott on the edge of the area, and Scott just fires it past David Raya. 2-1 Bournemouth.
That specific combination, Krupi to Brooks to Evanilson to Scott, is just a masterclass in exploiting tight spaces.
It all happened right in the center, right on the edge of the Arsenal box.
Right, which requires instantaneous decision-making and flawless technique. But it also requires the defending team to be momentarily static.
Ball watching, basically.
Exactly. Arsenal's defenders were completely mesmerized by the quick interplay and didn't track the late surging run of Alex Scott.
Okay, let's dig into the underlying data here, because the BBC's stat sheet presents a really fascinating paradox.
It's a huge disconnect from the eye test.
Right. If you just look at the raw numbers, you'd assume Arsenal battered them. They had 52.7% possession.
They generated an expected goals, or XG, of 2.41 compared to Bournemouth's 1.2.
They had almost double the shots, 15-8. 34 touches inside the opposition box compared to Bournemouth's 18.
10 corners to Bournemouth's 1.
They even covered more distance, running 113.76 kilometers to Bournemouth's 108.101.
But this is the absolute textbook definition of sterile dominance.
The illusion of control.
Precisely. When we peel back the layers of those stats, the structural failure of Arsenal's attack becomes glaringly obvious.
Let's start with the shot count. 15 shots for Arsenal, but how many actually forced to save?
3. 3 shots on target out of 15. And Bournemouth took 8 shots and also put 3 on target.
So Arsenal's possession was entirely peripheral.
Completely.
Wait, I need to pause on the expected goals metric because a 2.41 XG sounds like a team creating high-quality, dangerous chances. How do you get over 2 XG and only hit the target 3 times?
Well, it's because of how the XG model values penalties.
Ah, right.
Yeah, a penalty kick is generally assigned an XG value of roughly 0.79, meaning historically 79% of penalties result in a goal.
So if we subtract that single isolated event from Arsenal's total,
their XG from open play drops to a staggering 1.62. But honestly, it gets worse.
How so?
A significant portion of that remaining XG came from low probability, blocked shots in crowded penalty areas following corners.
So it wasn't even fluid attacking play.
Not at all. The BBC data reveals that Arsenal's XG from pure open play, meaning flowing, dynamic attacking moves, was a mere 0.19.
Let me just visualize that for a second for the listener. An XG of 0.19 from open play means that over 90 minutes, the combined probability of all their dynamic attacking sequences resulting in a goal was less than 20%.
Exactly. They were passing the ball 389 times compared to Bournemouth's 363, but those passes were entirely lateral.
Just forming a U-shape around the penalty area.
Right, from left back to center back to right back, never actually penetrating the defensive lines.
And when they did finally manage a rare breach, Petrovic was magnificent in goal. He made this top-drawer acrobatic save to tip a massive Declan Rice strike over the bar.
And the physical data confirms this lethargy, too.
Right, they outran Bournemouth by nearly 5 kilometers, but
the BBC movement breakdown classifies 59.14% of Arsenal's total movement as jogging.
wow, so they weren't executing high-intensity sprints to break the lines.
No, they were merely accumulating empty miles, just jogging into their designated tactical zones and waiting for something to happen.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second with an analogy. Arsenal stats look like a student who wrote a 5,000-word essay that completely missed the prompt, while Bournemouth wrote a brilliant one-page memo that got the A.
That's a perfect way to describe it. And it really elevates the historic magnitude of what Bournemouth accomplished here.
12 matches unbeaten in the Premier League now, right?
Yes. Statistically, that is their longest unbeaten streak ever in the top flight of English football. They haven't tasted a league defeat since January 3rd.
Incredible. And Junior Krupi's opening goal put him in the history books, too.
Yeah, he became only the second teenager in Premier League history to score 10 goals in his debut season.
Matching Robbie Keane for Coventry City in the 1999-2000 season. A 26-year-old record.
And that fluid, vertical, confident attacking play from Bournemouth didn't just happen by accident.
No, it was a direct result of a tactical masterclass by Bournemouth's manager, Andoni Iraola.
He mercilessly exposed the deep systemic rigidities in Mikel Arteta's tactical setup.
So let's transition into that tactical breakdown.
Yeah.
Because Iraola completely outmaneuvered Arsenal on the flanks.
He identified a glaring vulnerability in Arsenal's defensive width and just relentlessly exploited it.
Using his fullbacks, right?
Yes, Alex Jimenez and Adrian Truffert. He deployed them extremely high up the pitch.
And because they had fresh legs from the 3-week break, they could just continuously overlap their wingers.
Exactly. It created constant 2-on-1 overloads against Arsenal's isolated defenders.
The official reports note that Arsenal just couldn't shut off the attacking threat from Jimenez and Truffert all game. And they seemingly built their entire game plan around targeting the left side of Arsenal's defense.
Specifically, isolating Miles Lewis-Skelly.
Which we have to contextualize why Lewis-Skelly was even on the pitch in a title-deciding match.
Arsenal is navigating a really severe injury crisis.
Yeah, Bukayo Saka is out. Captain Martin Odegaard is missing. Jurrien Timber is injured. And Ricardo Calafiori was unavailable.
So Arteta was forced to start Lewis-Skelly, a very young player making only his second league start of the entire season, at left back.
And Iraola saw a rookie defender and systematically funneled his attacks right into that zone.
It was ruthless.
But, you know, I understand the defensive frailty caused by injuries. I want to challenge the offensive setup here, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the fans on the Argunners subreddit were absolutely tearing into Arteta's decision to deploy a midfield double pivot of Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi.
They really were.
They were calling it totally redundant and overly negative for a home game against a mid-table team.
Well, the fans' frustration is rooted in the actual mechanical function of a double pivot.
Right, because when you play two holding midfielders who naturally want to occupy the exact same deep central spaces, they just get in each other's way.
Exactly. And more importantly, when they both drop deep to receive the ball from the center backs, they create this massive physical gap between the midfield and the attacking line.
Which slows down the ball progression.
Because they require an extra pass to move the ball forward, which gives Bournemouth's defensive block all the time in the world to easily shift and reset.
A Reddit user named Bukayo captured this perfectly. They said, "I'm so done with the Rice and Zubi pairing. It's redundant and offers more negatives than positives."
It's a very common complaint right now.
But let me push back on this narrative for a second. Here's where it gets really interesting. If Odegaard is injured, Arteta has lost his primary creative number 10.
True.
So isn't deploying a double pivot a necessary mathematical adjustment to ensure midfield stability? Doesn't he have to prioritize control if he knows the team lacks creative spark?
I mean, theoretically, yes, that is the justification, but the practical execution was deeply flawed.
Because of how it impacted Kai Havertz.
Exactly. To compensate for the lack of a number 10, Arteta pulled Kai Havertz back into a deeper midfield role.
Even though Havertz had been thriving all season as a primary striker making late runs into the box.
Right. By forcing him into a deeper playmaking role, a role that demands intricate passing through tight spaces, which is really not his primary strength, Arteta disrupted the entire attacking rhythm.
Which then severely isolated Victor Gyokeres, forcing him to play as the lone number 9.
He was completely stranded up there.
Yeah, without Havertz to draw away defenders, and with Rice and Zubimendi sitting deep, Gyokeres was left battling two center backs entirely on his own.
And the rival fans on Riddle Devils were ruthless about his performance.
Oh man. A user named Rizzy28 mocked his heavy touches, claiming he was moving like a cart horse.
When your striker is fighting for scraps with zero service, the entire offensive structure just turns to sludge.
It speaks to this dogmatic obsession with structural control, doesn't it? Is he treating his players like remote-controlled robots rather than letting them express themselves?
That's the criticism of the Pep Guardiola school of thought, which Arteta obviously comes from. They prioritize controlling the transitional phases of the game above all else.
The idea being that if you maintain possession and keep two holding midfielders deep, you're never exposed to a counterattack.
Right, and your sheer quality will eventually wear the opponent down.
But that philosophy fundamentally shattered against Bournemouth because Bournemouth refused to let them have comfortable possession.
They initiated a highly aggressive, coordinated high press.
A Reddit fan analysis pointed out that Arsenal simply lacked the technical proficiency on the day to pass through that pressing structure.
And when that plan A of sterile domination failed and Arsenal found themselves trailing, the tactical rigidity just gave way to absolute panic.
We saw that panic manifest physically in the 54th minute.
Less than 10 minutes into the second half.
Yeah, with the system clearly failing, Arteta initiates this massive structural overhaul. He makes a triple substitution.
Bringing on Gyokeres, Leandro Trossard, and a 16-year-old academy player, Max Daumann, all at exactly the same time.
Throwing a 16-year-old kid into a match where your Premier League title hopes are actively evaporating in front of 60,000 terrified fans.
It doesn't compute.
It does not compute as a calculated tactical shift. That registers as a manager hitting the emergency eject button.
It's the tactical equivalent of throwing the instruction manual right out the window.
And the tragic irony of these substitutions, which the fan base immediately noticed, was the complete disconnect between the personnel and the strategy.
Oh, definitely. A user named CF016 laid it out with brutal clarity. They wrote, started with the 3 runners, then brought on the 3 more technical forwards, but then just started going long constantly.
It's a staggering contradiction. You introduce highly technical players who excel at short, sharp passing on the ground, and immediately the team abandons playing through the midfield and resorts to desperately booting long balls over their heads.
It is the ultimate indicator that the structural integrity of the team's psychology had collapsed.
They weren't executing a game plan anymore.
No, they were operating purely on anxiety and adrenaline. When a rigid, highly choreographed tactical system fails so publicly, players who have been drilled to act like cogs in a machine suddenly look entirely lost when asked to improvise.
And this tactical collapse directly feeds into the most visceral, emotionally charged element of the sources we examined.
The existential crisis on the Argunners subreddit.
Exactly. We weren't just reading tactical complaints there. The fans are experiencing a profound sense of mourning over perceived total loss of leadership, grit, and the very identity of the club.
The language they used is incredibly revealing. It moves way past analytical frustration and into deep questioning of character.
A user named Dressagrate2122 penned this massive critique that perfectly encapsulates it. They wrote, no leaders on the pitch, no grit, no grind, so soft mentally and physically. I have seen a fighter in this team since Alexis Sanchez.
That is a staggering indictment.
And they added, what other team that play in the top league in Europe would have Martin Odegaard as their captain?
Just brutal.
But I want to ask you to imagine the psychological weight on these players for a second. Why does the fan instantly reach for a concept like grit?
Well, it's about what happens when the system breaks down.
Right. If your manager coaches every single ounce of instinct out of you with positional play, where you're confined to a specific zone and told to only pass at predetermined angles.
Juego de posición, yeah.
Yeah. If you spend 5 years training a creative athlete to suppress their instincts and wait for the algorithm to solve the problem, how can you suddenly expect them to show grit and become a street-fighting maverick when the game plan falls apart?
That is the ultimate paradox of modern elite football. You are breeding these highly efficient technicians who are incredibly fragile outside of their prescribed conditions.
When the system works, it's a beautiful machine.
But when you're down a goal, it's raining, and the passing lanes are blocked, fans intuitively crave a player who will grab the game by the scruff of the neck through sheer force of will.
They want a Roy Keane or a Patrick Vieira.
Exactly. And they look at Odegaard, Rice, and Havertz, and they simply do not see that visceral aggression.
The fans are contrasting this robotic performance with ghosts of their own recent past. And they aren't even comparing it to the Invincibles under Arsene Wenger.
No, they are mourning the team from literally just 24 months ago.
A user named Tukidney8125 asked a question that resonated heavily. What happened to the Arsenal team of 2 seasons ago that played beautiful attacking football that was reminiscent of prime Barcelona?
The regression from a fluid attacking force into a stodgy, risk-averse defensive unit is heavily lamented.
Rival fans on Red Devils are openly mocking Arteta's current system as anti-football.
And the Arsenal supporters themselves recognize the robotic nature of their squad. The absence of Ricardo Calafiori was cited repeatedly.
Yeah, user TimeCandle6322 explicitly stated, Calafiori is literally our only player with any kind of unpredictability, Everyone else plays like a robot.
And this perceived softness, this lack of ruthless edge, is being tied directly to the broader cultural decisions made by the manager.
Oh, the goalkeeping situation.
Yes. The post-match threads brought up the recent Carabao Cup and FA Cup finals, both of which Arsenal failed to win.
Because Arteta chose to start Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal over their clear number one, David Raya.
The psychological ripple effect of that decision is huge. A fan named Kaza SG argued that starting Kepa felt like a decision born out of kindness or loyalty, rather than a ruthless obsession with fielding the strongest possible 11 to win a trophy.
If a manager prioritizes rewarding a backup player over an uncompromising desire to win, the dressing room absorbs that mentality.
It communicates that absolute high performance is not the ultimate currency at the club.
If you breed complacency at the top, it trickles down until you have a team that jogs for 59% of a title-deciding match while losing at home.
And this internal implosion isn't happening in a vacuum. The rest of the Premier League is watching, and the Sharks are circling.
The schadenfreude from rival fan bases is absolutely staggering. Let's look at those rival reactions, not to partake in the mockery, but to understand how this fragility is perceived by the broader ecosystem.
The neutral and rival fans across soccer and our Premier League are mercilessly applying the Bottlers FC label.
They are actively dissecting Arteta's touchline behavior too. A user named Red Brummy commented, "Lego man waving his hands, tapping his watch and complaining about time wasting one of the funniest sights in football. The Goobers got exactly what they deserved."
Arteta's constant, frantic gesturing from the technical area really acts as a lightning rod.
Because when they're winning, it's framed as the passionate intensity of a genius.
But when they're losing, and the players look completely devoid of ideas, that exact same behavior looks like a man desperately trying to use a remote control on a television that has been unplugged from the wall.
That's a great image. Over on the Manchester United subreddit, Red Devils, they hosted a dedicated hate watch thread specifically for this match.
They proudly celebrated the result.
They were genuinely furious with the officiating advancing theories of systemic bias, claiming Michael Oliver gave Arsenal every possible advantage, including that soft penalty.
One user, Hagball, provided a highly cynical summary. Opposing player comes within 1 centimeter of Arsenal player, and Arsenal player falls down. Ref gives free kick to Arsenal. Summary of every Arsenal game.
Obviously heavily colored by rival bias. But amidst the vitriol on Sark Soccer, there was a genuinely profound tactical analysis offered by a neutral user named Non-Relevant.
Yes, the Ajax comparison. This is a brilliant insight that we need to deeply unpack.
They drew a direct structural comparison between Arsenal's potential collapse under Arteta and the recent collapse of Ajax in the Eredivisie under Francesco Ferriola.
They contrasted the control-based, heavily defensive, risk-averse football of Farioli and Arteta against the expansive, high-risk attacking styles of managers like Peter Bosz and Pep Guardiola.
The psychological theory here is fascinating.
It really is. If you build your entire tactical foundation on not conceding.
Like if your primary objective is to just maintain a clean sheet and grind out a 1-0 or 2-0 victory?
Right, you create an incredibly fragile mental state within your squad. Because the moment you inevitably concede a goal, the very foundation of your game model is destroyed.
You aren't structurally or psychologically built to chase a game. The margins for error are just microscopic.
Conversely, if you build a team modeled on outscoring the opponent, if you go down 1-0, the psychological blow is minimal.
The mindset is just, we are built to score 3 goals anyway, let's go.
Exactly. Arsenal, by relying so heavily on defensive rigidity and the double pivot, clearly lacks that resilient attacking psychology when the scoreline goes against them.
It's a structural flaw that breeds panic. And the agonizing reality of their situation is deeply understood by the fans.
Yeah, an Arsenal supporter named Spenno highlighted a brutal, tragic irony unfolding in the league table.
Oh, this is crazy. They pointed out that in order to ultimately win the title, Arsenal might find themselves relying on beating West Ham on the final day of the season.
Which sounds fine, until you realize that defeating West Ham might inadvertently save their absolute bitterest rivals, Tottenham Hotspur, from relegation.
It's a Premier League soap opera, and Arsenal fans are currently trapped in the tragedy arc, a nightmare where even their potential salvation comes at an agonizing cost.
And while the Arsenal fan base is spiraling into this complex web of despair, the contrast with the Manchester City fans over on RMCFC is just chilling in its clinical detachment.
The City supporters are operating with a terrifying, calculated calm. The title of their primary post-match thread was simply one word: calma.
They are exhibiting the psychological superiority of a fan base that has witnessed their team navigate this exact pressure cooker successfully, year after year.
They aren't relying on emotional hope, they are running the mathematics. City fans know they currently sit at 61 points, trailing Arsenal 70.
But City holds two crucial games in hand.
And they are meticulously calculating the goal difference swing. A user named Bane Chipmunk explicitly broke down the math.
Right, noting that if City beats Arsenal in their upcoming head-to-head clash, every goal they win by essentially counts double in the goal difference race.
It subtracts one from Arsenal's tally and adds one to City's.
They are mathematically plotting the collapse.
That quiet, inevitable confidence from the City camp is a heavy psychological weight bearing down on Arsenal, which requires us to pivot and examine the terrifying reality of Arsenal's immediate future.
Because the schedule they're staring down over the next 2 weeks is nothing short of a crucible.
Let's lay out the gauntlet. Arsenal is still technically top with 70 points, but the momentum has violently swung. This Wednesday, they have to navigate the second leg of their Champions League quarterfinal against Sporting CP.
A fixture that demands massive physical exertion and supreme emotional concentration.
Immediately following that European clash, on Sunday, they must travel to the Etihad Stadium to face Pep Guardiola's Manchester City.
A match that will likely define the entire season.
And if they manage to survive that, they face a physically bruising encounter with Newcastle.
The crushing weight of these impending fixtures is heavily present in the fan discourse. A user named Comdine1997 perfectly articulated the shifting psychology.
What did they say?
They observed that the team has been playing with the creeping fear of losing a single game for months. But after the Bournemouth defeat, they are suddenly staring down the absolute terror of losing everything.
The historical trauma of the fan base is bubbling to the surface. A user named Trogunner invoked the ghosts of the infamous 2007-08 season.
Oh, that's a painful memory for them.
Yeah, for context for you listening, that was a year Arsenal looked destined for the title before a horrific injury and late-season collapses derailed them.
Right.
This user warned, I don't think you guys realize what is happening here.
Right.
But in 07-08, we lost the momentum, and after that it was an exodus of best players every year. Even Henry, our best player, ever left Arsenal to Barcelona.
They are explicitly predicting that if this squad finishes the year empty-handed, the entire project is dead.
Especially with a World Cup looming, which historically disrupts club loyalty and momentum.
It is a highly rational fear based on the brutal economics of modern elite football. A manager is only granted a finite number of cycles to convert potential into tangible major trophies.
Before the belief within the dressing room just evaporates.
Exactly. If ambitious players finish second in 3 or 4 consecutive campaigns, they inevitably begin to question if the ceiling has been reached. They start looking toward clubs like Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, where trophies are a statistical certainty.
So what does this all mean for you as a football fan watching this unfold? Is it possible that the pressure of a title race is actually a physical weight that drains players faster than running 10 kilometers?
The science of sports psychology strongly supports that. What we witnessed was profound cognitive fatigue.
From the Champions League, the Cup finals?
Yeah, the cumulative mental toll of navigating high-stakes knockout rounds, the emotional scarring of losing domestic cups due to questionable selection choices like the Kepa incident, and the relentless demand for perfection in the league. It violently caught up to them.
Their decision-making was consistently a fraction of a second slower than Bournemouth's.
And in the Premier League, a fraction of a second is the difference between a clean interception and conceding the winning goal.
Which leaves us with the ultimate defining question for Arsenal's season. Does Mikel Arteta possess the managerial flexibility and the humility to pivot away from a failing system?
Or will he stubbornly cling to the rigid tactical framework, the redundant double pivots, and the robotic positional play that just failed him so spectacularly?
That decision will dictate his legacy, won't it?
Absolutely. The truly elite managers in the history of the sport, the Sir Alex Fergusons, the Jurgen Klopps, the Carlo Ancelottis, they possess an innate instinct for when a team is suffocating under its own structure.
They know when to abandon the spreadsheet.
And inject a necessary spark of chaotic brilliance into a dying squad. If Arteta insists on micromanaging every single pass when his team clearly requires freedom and emotional release, he may actively manage them out of a championship.
This brings us to the core takeaways of our deep dive. We've witnessed incredible duality this weekend.
2 completely different realities.
On one side, you have AFC Bournemouth achieving historic, unprecedented heights, 12 games unbeaten. unearthing a generational talent in Junior Krupi, executing fearless, flowing football under the brilliant tactical mind of Andoni Iraola.
They are a collective operating with absolute joy and freedom.
And on the opposing side, you have Arsenal, a giant of the game triggering an existential crisis in the span of a single afternoon. Paralyzed by tactical rigidity, haunted by questionable squad selections, and terrified of a fourth consecutive title collapse.
The stark contrast between those two realities is just staggering.
And for you listening, the lessons embedded in this match extend far beyond the pitch. We're observing a real-time study in how high-pressure environments dictate human performance.
Intense pressure can either forge a collective into diamonds or it can crush a rigid structure into dust.
When a leader attempts to completely control every single variable in an inherently chaotic environment, the moment one tiny variable slips out of their grasp, the entire complex structure is at risk of catastrophic failure.
Bournemouth embraced the natural chaos of the game and thrived within it. Arsenal attempted to algorithmically micromanage it, and they suffocated.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Building on that concept of control, we began our analysis discussing the modern expectation of mechanical precision in sports.
All right, the data-driven approach.
But if a control-based defensive football philosophy ultimately drains a team's creative spirit and grit, are we witnessing the end of the tactical era, where managers try to script every single pass?
It's a fascinating question.
Maybe the dominant teams of the future will have to return to the beautiful chaos of actually trusting the player's instincts. Think about that the next time you watch a team pass sideways for 5 minutes, terrified of making a mistake.